into it, to get you all in the mood for us talking at you for the next half an hour, 40 minutes. So I'll pass over to the team that are going to run you through the first gin, and then I'll be back to kind of kick off with the agenda and a bit of an opening slide.
Perfect, thanks. Emma and Andrew, did you want to kick off with the gin tasting?
Yeah, that's great. Thank you very much. So just a very quick intro from me. I'm Andrew, co-founder of the virtual tasting company. Bytes have asked us to host this event for you. I'm going to hand straight across to Gareth and Emma, husband and wife team from the Shropshire Distillery, the award-winning Shropshire Distillery. Emma, distiller, and Gareth, a husband that supports. And they're going to take you through a couple of gins. We're going to start with the Shire gin. So without further ado, I'll hand you across to Emma.
Yeah, perfect. Hi everyone, good evening. I'm Emma, this is Gareth, as the guys have mentioned, and we are the Shropshire Distillery. Husband and wife team started off at home in a purpose-built gin shed at the bottom of the garden, which you can sort of see behind us now. We've moved away from that, and we've got a purpose-built distillery with a gin school. But yeah, the first gin we're going to go in for is, you have received in your little pack, it's a little one with the red wax top on. So if you unscrew that, get yourself a glass with some ice in there, most importantly, pop it in. Before you pour any tonic in, what I would suggest is give yourself a little bit of a sip with it neat, just to try it neat first of all, just to try the smoothness. All of our gins are award-winning gins, some of them being multi-award-winning gins, and a lot of the comments we get on them is because of how smooth they are. So yeah, pop it in your glass with your ice, take a sip of it neat, just to taste that smoothness. It is 40%, so it is still quite strong, but it's a very smooth gin, and you get the delicate notes of the botanicals in there, which I'll explain to you what they are in a moment. And then your mixer you're going to add in is your Franklin & Sons in the pale blue, which is a light tonic. So we've chosen a light tonic purely because of the botanicals we've got in the gin. Gin wouldn't be gin without juniper, so predominantly a juniper-based gin. You've then got English coriander in there, and the subtle tones of botanicals you get in there. We're going to pop a slice of lime in there as well as a garnish. Botanical wise, so cheers everybody, have a try with it in the tonic. So you should now find the botanical flavors have now lifted. So you've got things in there like rose petals. With being from Lancashire as a family, you can probably see the Lancashire rose here on our logo. We put some rose petals in there. It is only a subtlety of the rose petals, so it's not too perfumey, too overpowering, but that gives it a slight floral note. You've got grapefruit peel in there. You've got sweet orange to add some citrus and zest, along with some cassia bark, which gives some warmth, and then we've got licorice root powder in there to add a touch of sweetness to help offset some of the juniper and the English coriander. But I hope you all enjoy it. Have a sip, have a taste. Again, like I say, it is an award-winning gin. We make it all here on site at the distillery. We don't farm it out and then bottle it here. It's crafted by ourselves, mainly me, I do have to say. Gareth, as Andrew said, is here two to 3 days a week. But we're a family-run distillery, and we've been trading since 2018, so still quite very young and in our infancy. But yeah, we've got multi-awards, and we've got a gin school, and we're just continuing to grow and grow and make more gin, essentially. So I look forward to speaking to you all shortly with regards to our next gin, which is our spice gin. Which is a very popular one, and again, you know, getting to speak to you about that and telling you how best to drink that and perfect serves.
So enjoy the rest of your event, and we'll be back with you guys later.
Yes, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you. Simon, if I could get you to just pop that slide up. So everyone, thank you for, as Cassie said, thank you for taking the time out. I'm briefly going to run you through the agenda, and then a little bit of context for why we're even bringing the DataShield proposition to market, a little bit of background about the team and our Amazon business. So I'm Adam Thornton. I'm the Alliances Director within Bytes. So I have overall responsibility for a number of our technical propositions. Context for today is around AWS. It's one of our fastest growing partnerships. And indeed, we're one of the fastest growing Amazon partners in the UK. So we've got some great content and great speakers today. I'll be doing a couple of minutes and then handing over to Tom Sargent, who heads up storage for EMEA across Amazon. He'll be talking us through why AWS for cloud backup, some of their vision, and some of the salient points that are worthwhile you understanding when making a decision around what cloud and what type of storage is best for you. Then we'll go over to Simon Walker, who's our Public Cloud Service Director. He'll be talking you through a little bit about our team, the makeup of the team, how we can support clients, different initiatives that we can support with, but then very much going into the detail of the DataShield proposition and why we built the service out. And then finally, we've got Jeannie from Veeam, who'll be running through the Veeam proposition, talking you through kind of the roadmap of where Veeam see that they can support clients in that data journey in cloud. And then finally, we'll finish up with some Q&A. As Cassie said at the beginning, please by all means put questions in as we go along. We want to make it as interactive at the end as possible, and we'll close off by one final gin tasting before we leave you. So a bit of context to our AWS business and why we've even got to the point of talking about a DataShield proposition. So we set up our Amazon team a little over 3 years ago, and the goal was very much to help our customers take away the operational unknowns and challenges around not only adoption of AWS, but indeed for customers that are in Amazon, it was really helping them to understand, getting visibility, gaining control, and really having a plan for what you do moving forward. So a lot of our launch services initially were around governance, cost, and technical optimization. But over the last few years, we've really broadened out our capabilities, and indeed a large part of what we do now is taking customers in large-scale migration projects into AWS. But very much we're always looking at the different entry points for customers. And so clearly, when it comes to cloud, we can look at backup, DR, security, clearly compute. But we believe, and one of the reasons why DataShield is kind of one of the initial kind of productized launch services for us, is that getting data into the cloud is key. It gives you a whole load of new options in terms of what you do, how you utilize that data, but more importantly, how it gives you a runway to driving additional services up into the cloud. So we've coined the brand of DataShield. Initially, we've launched this service with Veeam as our key go-to-market partner, but longer term, this is very much a kind of agnostic service that sits across a number of vendors and different technologies. So we do see this more as, conceptually, if you're looking at doing, if you want to put backup and indeed data into the cloud, DataShield is more around our process and our route to helping you navigate all the different facets of making the right decisions. So that's really it from me. There's going to be a couple of call to actions at the end. And I think the biggest of which is, if what you hear today is of interest, we have a very clear way of getting you information in terms of costs to move back up into the cloud, costs when you're in AWS, and then guidance around how you can keep operational excellence in terms of the ongoing management of that estate. So we've got some clear call to action, some online questionnaires where you can fill in the data, and we'll come back to you with a statement of work for what would it cost to move, what would it cost when you're there, and indeed what funding can we get from Amazon to support that piece of work. But indeed, if you're old school like myself and you just want to have a conversation with us, then absolutely, we'll be following up with each and every one of you. So that's hopefully giving you a bit of context for why we're doing what we're doing. As I say, please, log questions as we go. But for now, I'll shut up and I'll pass over to Tom Sargent from Amazon. Hopefully I'll catch up with you all later on. Cheers, Tom.
Fantastic. So good afternoon, everybody. I hope you're nicely lubricated already. This kind of shows that I've been at an all-you-can-drink afternoon bar, so hopefully I'm at the same level. No, not really. I'm at a WeWork in London, so I'm in a little booth, so it sounds a bit echoey to me. Hopefully it's okay for all you guys. So my name's Tom Sargent, and I lead our storage partner segment across EMEA, which means I'm really interested in all ISVs who drive storage to AWS, all partners who drive storage to AWS, and I'm super interested in how we can join them together with you guys as customers to derive value from our joint services. Now, I'm going to talk a little bit at the business level, a little bit at the tech level as to why AWS for backups. So please bear with me. If you've got any questions, do chuck them in the chat and we'll try and get onto them as quickly as possible. So thinking about why AWS for backup, well, you need the right storage for any data. And we're in a really fortunate position that we're #1 for object, #1 for block, and #1 for file systems in the cloud. And you may have heard about S3 storage. It's huge, it's a big deal. It's been around for 15 years. It was our foundational storage protocol. You may have heard about our EBS block. It's what we attach to our EC2 instances, where we can boot from, store data, that kind of stuff. Also #1 in file. So we've got a number of file storage products, and we recently launched Amazon FSx for NanoContact last week, and you'll hear more about that from us and Bytes really soon. So I just wanted to paint a picture of the scale of AWS and our regional expansion, so you can be really sure that as you're protecting data to AWS or even in AWS, we can kind of go pretty much anywhere, and that'll teach me for not turning off my chime in the background. But what's really important to note is that we've got all of these regions, we've got all these availability zones, and I can talk about that forever because I just love it. But what's really important is what customers are building on top of the AWS infrastructure. And we see customers building backup and restore environments. We see customers building archive and compliance environments, home directories, data lakes, and business critical applications. Now, you might not necessarily think that you want a conversation with a builder, or you might not be a builder yourself. But that's kind of okay, because over time, we've worked with a lot of the data protection vendors to get a really broad set of integration into ISV backup products. So wherever you back up, restore, and archive your data to or from today, you can effectively do the same thing to or from Amazon S3 with really deep integration with probably the same backup vendor that you use today. Or if you don't feel you're getting the right service from the backup vendor that you use today, well, I think you're going to be introduced to another one a little bit later on this call, who's perhaps one of the fastest growing backup vendors that work with Amazon. Now, just talking a little bit more about this S3 storage, it's really important to understand that we've lowered the cost of S3 storage by about 80% over the last 15 years. And every innovation that we bring to market helps lower that cost to store data over time. Now, we've got a vast array of different tiers of storage that we can use to store data for backup and archive purposes. And each of them has kind of a different use case. So we've got the S3 standard storage, which we introduced 15 years ago. S3 Glacier is a lower tier cost of storage, but we don't expect customers to be accessing it too frequently. So every time you want to draw data back from that tier of storage, which is incredibly cost effective, you may have a little bit of a charge. And the way we can think about this in a data protection perspective is that S3 standard storage might be your instantaneous backup. The S3 Glacier might be a backup that you don't really need to get to for a couple of hours, but you think you need to store it just in case you need to go back to it. So every new innovation that we bring helps lower the cost to store data over time. And typically the partners that we work with, such as Bytes, such as Veeam, are able to leverage each of these different services to ensure that we pass on those cost savings to you, the customer, so that you can derive best value from our joint services. So rather than spending too long on this particular slide, this is really just describing in a bit more detail the innovation that we've gone through over the years. I want to talk about durability. And it's really important to understand durability as you're making a data storage or a data protection decision as you move to cloud. So on premises, if you store a couple of copies of the tape on one site, we estimate the durability to be about 4 nines, and that's pretty good. But maybe if you store a copy of the data on 2 sites, that's even better. That gets to 5 nines durability. So if you work backwards and think about the amount of data that you might lose based on 4 or 5 nines durability if you try and restore your data, just bear in mind that an AWS region is designed for 11 nines durability. And that what that means is that whatever tier of storage we put our data in, your data in, whatever tier of storage, for example, Veeam or Bytes decide is the right tier of data for you based on their new service. We're going to ensure that we've got that 11 nines of durability to make sure that when you need to restore your data, it's there, it's durable, it's highly reliable, it's highly resilient. We can get it back in the event of a data protection or even a ransomware event. Now, it's really important to understand the true cost of storing data in cloud as well, because you probably already understand the cost of storing data on premises. You probably really understand how much it costs to do a tape backup today. Now, let's think about the direct storage cost. AWS can probably buy a disk for the same price that any other major vendor can buy a disk for. But it's really important to understand how then all of the extra charges mount up on how you use that disk, how you use that storage. In an on-premises world, we have to think about migrating data from backup system to backup system. If you're using, for example, a storage array for your backups today, when that's written down or no longer eligible for maintenance renewals in 3 to 5 years' time, you may need to migrate that data to another appliance. You may have an issue of underutilization where you have to buy an appliance at the capacity that you need in 3 to 5 years today, but you don't actually use that capacity for 3 to 5 years. So you're buying more storage than you need right now today. There's often the HR cost, the human resource to actually manage, install, maintain that system. Typically, there's hardware or software maintenance cost as well. So maybe initially you buy a system for 3 years, you decide you need to keep it for 4 or 5 years because you don't want that big bump to buy the next big system. You've got to buy some more storage. You've got to buy some more software, you've got to buy some more maintenance. Maybe there's a network cost as well that you need to factor in. And also the largest overall cost is often that data center space. So your power, your cooling, you're actually owning the square footage that you need to put that infrastructure in. Whereas with AWS, what we do is we charge a storage at rest cost, but then we also charge a relatively small cost for transferring data in, out, the request and retrieval of that data. Now, it's quite often the case that cloud storage can be made to appear more expensive than on-premises storage. It's quite often the case that on-premises storage can be made to look more expensive than cloud storage. So it's really important that we factor in all of these costs accurately for your individual circumstances. And that's something that I think Bytes will help do with their new DataShield service. Because we're moving from a traditional backup solution, which maybe isn't cost effective today, maybe it doesn't scale as seamlessly as you expected it to when you designed it maybe 10 or 15 years ago. It's consuming those valuable resources on premises that you just need to free up. And maybe it's costing you a little bit too much in terms of the high touch support that you need to maintain and upgrade it over time. So thinking about the traditional backup environment where you're backing up a server that's maybe got its data on a storage array, into a backup appliance, and then to offsite tape storage, there's kind of a better way. So we work with many data protection vendors, with many ISVs, with many partners to bring to market cloud connectors that help to move that data into AWS, typically Amazon S3, at the right tier of data based on the amount of time you expect to store the data for, ensuring that we maintain that lowest cost possible to store data in the short, medium, and long term. So, for example, instead of having a backup appliance backing up to tape, maybe you have Veeam that's going to back up to AWS. Now, you get some immediate benefits from leveraging cloud for backup. You have that increased level of durability. You can leverage your existing investments by only changing a small amount of infrastructure in your environment. We bring that cost-effective, near infinite scalable storage. We can eliminate the pain of managing tape, off-siting tape, cataloging tape. We can also help you unlock new insights from your data. So if you're protecting your data into AWS, you can actually restore that data into AWS to test that your backup actually works, but also to perform advanced analytics on that data set as you bring the power of the compute in AWS to bear on your data. Now, thinking about that broad part integration, I think it's really important to hand back to Bytes so they can talk a little bit more about their specific DataShield product and how it leverages both AWS, and other vendor technology. So thanks very much for the opportunity to talk to you. And if my battery lasts, I'll be here to take some questions later.
Thanks, Tom. Just going to share my screen now. Hopefully you guys can see that.
Yeah,
No, we'll show it. Oh, brilliant. Thanks. Okay, so my name is Simon Walker. I'm the Cloud Services Director, as Adam mentioned, and I'm going to be basically covering off a bit more of a kind of broad overview of the Bytes AWS Cloud practice and a bit of detail around how we kind of came up with the DataShield service and kind of what's involved in that. So when we talk to customers, they're very much on different stages of their life cycle of their Amazon journey. And what we've built really within the practice is the ability to take customers all the way from scratching their heads, not really knowing where to start, or somebody within the organization saying, we're going to move to cloud, but then not really understanding what that means, what the costs are, what's involved. So you can see on this slide, we've kind of built a journey, and each of these different phases, it's worth pointing out, there's a funding program from Amazon. We've kind of touched on that there is funding for the DataShield service, and there is funding for each of these kind of key phases, because what Amazon's really good at is supporting customers kind of take those tentatively steps into looking at the cloud without massively overcommitting and wasting resources before they feel that actually this is right for us and this is what we're going to go for. So the first one we talk about often is assess. So the assess phase is where we will look at what your current on-premise architecture looks like and work out what that would look like in AWS in terms of costs, resources, security, backup requirements, and essentially give you a clear plan of what is the next steps from that. Typically, we see customers take that report presentation back internally, so that promotes more discussion. And often off the back of it, they'll say, yes, we want to go to the next stage. Again, at this point, there is still no commitment and it's been funded by AWS. So in the discovery phase, we start to look at more detail around the TCO. We look at migration risk assessment. So we go through all the key facets of what's involved in a migration and do a scoring depending on, for example, what your skills are internally. Do we need to look at training programs for certain individuals so they can pick up on the Amazon skills they're going to need to look after the infrastructure when it moves on. So this is still a journey. So it's not expected that you're going to be 100% across the whole board. It's more likely that if it's very early stages, you're going to be quite low down. But by the end of it, we have a clear plan. We know the total cost of ownership compared to doing something yourself or differently. And then we start to look at formalizing that migration plan. Then we move into the mobilize phase. So this is where we get into the detail. We do a lot of security. A service called landing zones is discussed and architected, which is essentially the platform that your Amazon architecture would sit on. And also within that phase, we do a pilot. And again, just to reiterate, this is typically funded, often 100% funded, but at least partially funded. So this part of the project is critical because we actually look at everything we've learned from the discovery phase, kind of implement it in the mobilize phase, and then we make changes before we move to the migrate phase. So the pilot really is there to ensure that we are everything's in place and we fully understand what the next step's going to look like. And then we move into the migration phase. So obviously the migration phase is where we break everything down into succinct waves and we start moving those applications, workloads across, fully managed by our PMO team with regular updates. Once you're in the cloud, it doesn't stop there. The journey definitely shouldn't stop there, because once you're in the cloud, that's where modernization can start, and that's where you can start to save money, significant money, by moving from kind of traditional architecture, server to serverless, to using microservices, going true kind of cloud native. And again, there's funding programs for us to assess those workloads and then drive those costs down in those areas. And then we have this ongoing cost optimization managed services that we typically overlay onto most of our customers. And this again makes sure that costs are kept in control, and any support that you need above and beyond the standard stuff that you get from Amazon, we can offer that on a 24/7 basis through our architects that are awake all the time, not just individually. the whole team. So from that perspective, what we've tried to build here is a full kind of life cycle. And now drilling into the DataShield service itself. So as Adam touched on, what we've done here is to try and make this very easy. Again, this shouldn't be a hard decision. It should be quite quickly identified if this is right for you. So first off, we'll go through an assessment review, which is essentially a questionnaire. Then off the back of that, we can build out a bespoke AWS design and produce a statement of work. That will tell you exactly what you're going to get, how much it's going to cost. And then we look at what funding is available to offset some of those costs, which is generally appreciative when you're looking at TCO. And then we look for sign-off. And once that's all done and you've agreed that, then we start moving into the other basis of the project itself. And again, we're not just provisioning an S3 bucket here. We do a lot more. So we do, particularly with customers that have got no experience with AWS, we try and take all that pain away and basically deliver you an environment back that you can start using immediately with our partner solution with Veeam. So we secure the VPC. So we essentially talk to you about the network, what it's going to look like, and we design that with you based on best practices from Amazon and Veeam, and that is built out for you. We also look at the AMI Gold image that should be there for your staging server, for your backup. Again, we take all the kind of guesswork out of that, and we will provision that for you using CloudFormation orchestration technology within AWS. And then security, which forms a big part of most customers' kind of requirements, where we start talking about object locking and air gaps between data and how that's best designed into the solution, mutable data. So we work with you to find out exactly what you need. So the solution at the end of it is what you need for the business. And we look to kind of own this working with you and your technical teams. So Tom's done an amazing job already of kind of explaining why customers are looking at this. And my background is managing data centers, and I know the pain of replacing disks and arrays and going to the FD saying, yeah, we've run out of space again, or we need to buy more disks. And then what people don't really calculate into the total costs of owning these stuff on premise is the fact that when you actually need a new array or a disk or whatever it might be, you have to go out and get quotes, and then you have to get an engineer scheduled in to pull out the old disk, put the new disk in, and all that purchase order process is very much ignored when you're looking at cost. Whereas obviously in Amazon, it will just scale, and obviously you can remove data as you need to, or you can move it into the very cheap storage that Amazon can offer if it's not accessed regularly. So there's so much more flexibility in terms of scale and what you can do with it. The durability of the disk is a key part of it, and I know this was mentioned, but this is worth emphasizing. The 11 nines of durability means that, you know, it's going to be almost completely rare that you're going to have a display that affects your data, which is obviously really key, and not the case if it's your own array where you've got a single array with disks running within it, and it is possible that you're going to have a lot less durability in that situation. And then security and global security at scale, basically putting this data in different regions to make sure that if one region's lost, you have another region available. Very easy to do within Amazon. And the final point is, which often gets missed, is what are we doing with this data? We have so much data within our organizations, but are we actually using that? Are we going to the marketing teams and sales teams and saying, actually, we've got a lot of data here. What do you want to know out of it? And they say, well, you know, it's too difficult to get that data out. It's too difficult to analyze that data. Within Amazon, there's a whole range of services that are specifically designed to interrogate that data and produce really important business information that you can make decisions on. So that data all of a sudden becomes an asset as opposed to just something that costs you money and sitting in an array somewhere gathering dust. So yeah, some of the machine learning and analytics on that data can be done, and it's a lot easier obviously to do it if it's in the same place, if those analytical tools are in the same place where your storage is, which is key. So something that we would also kind of encourage you to look at and think about. Okay, that is me. Obviously, we're going to do questions at the end, but now I'm going to hand over to Jean for the Veeam overview and why AWS.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Simon. Let me share
Problem.
slides quick and we will get going. Here we go. Right. See how familiar I am with Zoom here now.
Test.
I know it is a task, clearly. How I make the slideshow. All right. So I'm Jeannie Kroll, Veeam Software. I run our global public cloud solutions business. So this partnership with AWS and with Bytes is super important to me because of the outcomes that it enables for customers at the end of the day. So I want to talk a little bit about how together we can help accelerate cloud journeys, but some of the reasons why cloud journeys are important at all. So first, when we look at hybrid cloud, I firmly believe that for most customers, it is a hybrid world. It means when you look across your environment, there are some workloads that it makes sense to run in public cloud environment in AWS, and there's some workloads that you may want to keep on-prem. And that's the beauty of the cloud, is that it makes all of those things possible for you. When we survey our customers and take a look at, where they were at in 2022, you see 30% of customer environments moving to over 50% in 2023. So there's massive growth in this space. And I think a lot of you are probably, at some point in a cloud journey, whether that means you're just starting off, like are you just dipping your toe in, or are you, already starting to migrate, or you're already running production workloads. So we have a set of capabilities that really strives to make all of that for you as simple as possible, regardless of where you are on that journey. So talk a little bit about the company first. So if you're not familiar with Veeam, we are in 83% of Fortune 500 companies. We're the #1 market share in EMEA in terms of backup vendors, huge customer sat numbers, and we did 1.1 billion in revenue in 2020 and 400,000 customers globally. So a ton of customers are trusting their data and their backups with Veeam today. And we think that, looking at Veeam, whether you're a current customer or considering being a customer in the future, there's great opportunity for you to work with Veeam to leverage a lot of what AWS has to offer as well. You look at Gartner, so we've been in Magic Quadrant 5 years in a row, and a ton of industry awards. So we're a really strong leader in the space. And it's part of the reason why I came to Veeam myself 5 years ago and took over the public cloud business 2 years ago, is because I believe there's huge potential for Veeam in the public cloud space, and just to help customers at the end of the day. So that's really what we're looking for. So here's a set of all of our Veeam cloud capabilities. I want to talk a little bit about kind of why we have these capabilities and why we built out this business in the first place. So when you look at what a lot of organizations are experiencing today, one of the biggest is this massive uncontrolled data growth. So we have 34% of orgs that will see 35 to 49% growth in the amount of data that they have in the next year, with 10% growing by 50% or more. So when you start to look at that size of data, and if you try to keep up with on-prem storage to support that, that's a nightmare for everything we just heard Simon talk about, right? So public cloud becomes a really important element to leverage. And we heard Tom talk about the different storage capabilities that AWS has. And so as we look at government regulations, corporate regulations, a lot of companies now have to keep data for more than 7 years. So that uncontrolled data growth becomes a serious problem. And it really helps highlight why you may want to consider backing up to the cloud if you're not starting there already. So if you're just thinking about public cloud, you're just getting started, that capability, to tier your backups to AWS is a great way to get started. There's also a ton of increasing complexity. So in the past, probably in the data centers that Simon worked in, we talk about them being, 4-wall, it's a physical building. And now modern data center is not constrained by those 4 walls anymore. We're on-prem to the cloud, sometimes back. So it really becomes this hybrid world where you have this complex web of applications, devices that are being brought in, network connections, all of those things need to be protected. And if you're not protecting them properly today, and you're not thinking about what your cloud data protection strategy is, you can experience availability gaps. So that's what everyone's goal is, to stop that from happening. At the same time, we have compliance requirements that are continuing to escalate. So sometimes that 7 years can become 15 years of data retention that you need to deal with. And then obviously, I think security is probably the most thought about topic by IT pros today, is how are you making sure that your data is secure at all times? And ensuring security is really about ensuring that your data is available. So it needs to be available or your customers lose confidence in you, impacts your brand, and has a huge detrimental impact to your business overall. So when we look at Veeam Cloud capabilities, then the first one, like I said, is just you're starting with workloads on-prem and you're backing things up to AWS. So that's where DataShield really helps initially, is around just that piece. So like you want to get started, great. So DataShield can help you. They will provision all of that for you, provide training along the way. And that comes with cloud archival as well. So some customers may want to keep short-term backups on-prem. So say you do the first 7 days on-prem, and then maybe you're tiering to S3 or to even cooler levels of storage like Glacier from there. So that's always an option and allows you to take really good advantage of the storage tiering that AWS offers. At the same time, there is always disaster recovery. So maintaining full disaster recovery sites can be very costly, and that's something that a lot of organizations want to take on. But with Veeam, you have the ability to do disaster recovery to AWS as well. So, and disaster recovery is really just around mobility. So what that means is if you're looking at how you're migrating workloads, you can leverage it from a lift and shift. If you have a workload running on-prem, if you're trying to create a dev test environment from that workload, you can do that dev test in AWS. Or if you want to move that entire workload, that's also an option for you. So you get that kind of disaster recovery, lift and shift capability with Veeam as well. Ransomware protection and M365 backup are, I think, super key areas of concern for a lot of customers as well. So ransomware, I think if you Google ransomware any day, you see a whole slew of news stories about companies that have had challenges in that space. So that's where backups being stored in AWS, immutability really come into play. We see a ton of customers today. We all know that M365, previously Office 365, has a huge global footprint. And people are thinking about how do they back that up? So essentially today, those are things that are living in Microsoft's data centers. A lot of times it makes sense for you to look at backing that up to an AWS data center instead, because it's probably not the best backup practice to keep that all within one place. So we see a ton of customers who are very interested in using AWS capabilities for storage of their M365 data as well. And then, so we've talked about how you get started, right? So along your journey, you may just start by backing up to the cloud archival, maybe doing some dev tests, and you're thinking about migrating and lifting and shifting workloads to AWS. Well, once they're there, we still need to worry about workloads that are now residing in AWS and how are you protecting that? So that's where the cloud native backup piece comes in. So how are you looking at workloads that you've moved there? And what does your comprehensive data protection strategy look like along this spectrum? So if you're starting out just with on-prem workloads, now you have some workloads that are living in the cloud and you have a separate environment, right? Your on-prem environment, your cloud environment. How do you think about data protection holistically across that? So once again, that's where the hybrid story comes into play. You want, single pane glass that will show you all of those environments and what your data protection looks like across the spectrum for everything that you have in one place. And then finally, if you are using containers, it's also important to think about Kubernetes backup and what you're doing there around anything you may be running in EKS. So you may not be there yet, but as you look to get there, it's a great place to focus on, so that once again, you have this holistic data protection strategy. And those are all components that Bytes can help you with wherever you are along that journey. So Veeam is there, great capabilities, kind of one product, so you don't have to deal with multiple vendors if that's a concern, and you have a single pane, so people can get trained up on one product regardless of where you are across your cloud journey. Veeam can help. So we'll talk a little bit about the use cases that we have with AWS. So the first really is around, like I said, extending to AWS. So you have things running on-prem today. You want to back up any virtual physical workloads that you have living in an on-prem data center to S3 to Glacier. It gives you that immutable backup capability with S3's object lock integration. So immutability is a really big deal for a lot of customers today. It's great that S3 is able to offer that. And then, like I said, other cloud-based workloads. So if you are running an M365 environment today, you may want to think about how you extend that to store within AWS as well. Those migration capabilities, once again, you're directly restoring any Veeam backup that you have to AWS. So super easy to move them there, whether that's for a dev test, disaster recovery, or permanent migration. And then the cloud native backup piece, So it includes things that you're running, workloads that you're running in AWS that may have been kind of refactored. It includes Kubernetes. So when you take a look at your EKS environments you may have out there, and then it also includes a lot of customers are thinking about how to take advantage of the investments that they've made in VMware, and you may be running VMware Cloud on AWS. So you can also look at how you protect that. So if you're just replatforming and moving in, an on-prem VMware environment to AWS, you're able to back up and recover that environment as well once it's there. So regardless of what form your environment is taking, there's somewhere along the spectrum that these use cases can help you address. And then kind of beyond backup and recovery here. So
Is this frozen for everyone else?
Yeah, it looks like it's dropped
Yeah, I
out.
think it's-
Yes, frozen.
Oh, she's back. I
Oh.
think.
You back, Jean? You're on mute at the moment.
We need that t-shirt. I'm muted.
unmuting. Okay, I'm back in a new location. Sorry about that. We had a router that went down in the house. So small disaster, but we're back. I use Veeam. We're back up and running. And okay, let me reshare this largely.
I actually thought it was my internet connection. I was like, oh no, what's happened? I've just lost everything. It's just frozen. But no.
I'm back.
It's
Okay.
all good. At least you got 2 routers.
Yes. Are we good? Okay. So really here, once again, it's about that hybrid story. You can protect your cloud native as well as your on-prem environments. The strong partnership that we have with AWS really helps you ensure that your environment is always available, protected, actively working for your business. And then we're constantly innovating, partnering with AWS. So 2 major AWS releases last year, 1 this year already, and another coming soon. So we're constantly adding new capabilities in the space, and leveraging AWS enables us to do that. And then finally, if you're interested in getting started, and we have an offer right out there market now with AWS, 30 days free, unlimited licenses. So if you want to try this out for yourself, we'll give you a $250 cloud credit so that you can help offset the AWS infrastructure cost to try it. And then if you do decide to buy, we have a 3-month free offer, 25% off. Quick link if you want to check out the offer. And with that, I will release everyone back to gin tasting.
Thank you.
Cool, thanks, Jeannie. So that's the end of the presentations, everybody. We can go into a Q&A. I don't think there's been any questions put in the chat. So we'll open it up, take yourselves off mute. If anyone has any pressing questions, please feel free to jump in and put them to the team. So yeah, feel free if anyone's got anything that they want to ask. No. We're holding everyone back from that gin. Is that what everyone's wanting? Okay, let's kick off then. Let's pass back to Andrew and Emma and pick up the second gin. But if there are any questions that come to mind while we're doing the gin tasting, put them in the chat and we can have a couple of minutes just at the very end. So Andrew and Emma, over to you.
Fantastic. Okay, Emma, we're going to move on to the Shire Spice Gin then. Over to you.
So, second gin now, so with your copper top, so crack it open and pour it in a glass with some ice. Again, pop it in, but we want you to try this one neat as well. So spice gin, we do get sort of mixed comments to start with until people have tried it, because spiced, I think people think it might sort of like blow the head off, or might be like drinking your spice straw at home, and it really isn't. So pop it in the glass. These are double measures, by the way. So these are 50 cl that you're having with your tonic. So because I just looked at that, then that's quite a lot of gin in there, Gareth. But have a smell of it as well. This gin we describe as an aromatically spiced gin. So like I say, it's not spicy as in hot spicy. It's aromatically flavored. It's very warming, again, and very smooth. So have a try of it neat. Very smooth. And then we're going to use We paired this with ginger ale. So try your copper can now, a ginger ale. It works perfectly well with tonic as well, but just to add a point of something different. And not everybody actually likes tonic, so they like gin, but not necessarily tonic. So it's showing you a different way in which to have your gin and mixer, really. So we've served it with ginger ale, and then pop and if you've got your garnishes there, pop an orange slice in there. It is actually this ginger, gin is actually distilled with. I've lost my train of thought. I've had too much gin now already. We've distilled this with several different spices. So we've served it with a ginger ale. We've distilled it with cardamom, which does add some ginger notes in there. But the orange slice is what I was going to go back to. That's what I'm saying. The orange slice we've added in there to help enhance the orange, because we have distilled it with orange peel as well. So when we're distilling as distillers, as much as we have our juniper and our spices and our herbs, we do like to counteract that with some form of citrus and fruit notes. So you've got orange peel in there distilled with it as well, but also distilled with pink peppercorns to add some aromatic peppery notes. I've already mentioned the green cardamom pods in there, which helps add some ginger notes. We've then got cubebs in there, which very much look like a black peppercorn, but they're not as pungent as a black peppercorn. So much more of a smooth note going in. And then we've got our sort of balance of our 4 key botanicals. So juniper, as mentioned before, we've got English coriander, which we use, which is a lot more earthy, perhaps, and they're a smaller yield. So the coriander you might see in your spice jar at home, the yields on them are quite large, whereas these are quite small and earthy. They're from a farm down in Kent, aren't they?
Lots of zest as well with them.
More zest. So Gareth's part of Gareth's family of farmers, so we wanted to support British farming. A lot of our botanicals, being honest, do come from overseas, but this is where we can help British farming with the English coriander. And then you've got, like I said, cubebs, which not a lot of people have heard of them. Very similar to a black peppercorn, aren't they?
Yeah, we was going to use them at first, black peppercorn, but it was just a bit too overpowering for the smoothness and the sweet balance that we wanted in our spice gin. Like Emma said at the beginning, aromatic, more sort of floral notes in there, which go down really well. Very versatile. We can use it in cocktails, hot, cold. The ginger ale stands up really well with it. Again, a multi-award win, another silver medal this year and the year before. So we're really proud of that consistency. And yeah, if you take a look at us on any platforms, you'll see our ever-growing journey, and we keep moving. We've got some rebranding this month as well.
You might get a bit conflicted because we've got this on here, and then we've got the new logo in the background. So we're just slowly bringing the new versions in, aren't we? Yeah, so hopefully officially launch.
We've got lots to offer. You know, we've got our gin school, as you can see behind us, where you can come and make your own gin, which is becoming a lot more. We're getting a lot more corporate stuff days out, which is really nice, and sharing our experience with you guys, coming along, making your own gin, tasting, which is what we're all about. It's how the story started for us, about how we got sold a story that wasn't true. So the gin wasn't made in the county where we bought it from. So this is our coming back to the core, to the root of how we started, was to share our journey and be very open about what we do here in the distillery. You can see it all. Today is a mess. We've been working here today flat out, but
it's all open plan, isn't it? We don't hide anything. There are some boards up to hide the storage side of things, just because that can get a bit on top sometimes. But the whole distillery, Andrew will tell you, it's all open plan. You can clearly see where the product's made, because provenance is very important to us.
But we do have a range of gins, a core of gins. You guys have just tried the 2 today, which one of them is one of my particular favourite. I'm not allowed to have a favourite apparently, but I do, and one of them was one that you've tried today. So hopefully you guys feel that there was up to scratch. The awards really help us to. So yeah, I hope you guys have enjoyed it.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, guys. It's been superb.
Thank you.
And, yeah, we wish you all the success. I'm just gutted that I've got to be sensible and go to a parent-teacher evening tonight. Otherwise, I would have been fully partaking. But I don't think that would have set the right expectation. So yeah, thank you, guys. Yeah, so wish you all the luck in the future. I'm looking forward to tasting them later on this evening.
Yeah, perfect. What do you think?
Yeah. Cool. That'd be brilliant, and thanks for having us. I know it feels like we've rushed and maybe we've skirted over it, but yeah, it's been great. Thanks for letting us being involved in your journey today.
Brilliant, thank you guys.
Thank you.
So everyone, that kind of brings us to a close. I see there were a couple of questions that we've answered. There will be the recording shared, slide deck shared. Indeed, Matt Keeble, who works alongside Simon and I, will be following up with the majority of you just to see whether there are any things that we can help with outside of DataShield. But as I said at the very beginning, really keen to see how we can support, an extension of what you're already doing in Amazon, or a new conversation as to what you could be doing in Amazon. So please feel free to get in touch. But if there aren't any other questions, please feel free to drop off. We'll stay on for a couple of minutes if anyone's got anything they want to raise face to face. But thank you for your time and have a great evening.